Meaning that there was this, so Marxist feminists, as I said, they take this stand that essentially it is this, essentially this is what they are talking about. But we do feel that one has to fight for the revolution, and once the revolution comes, and then we do have to struggle. They don't say कि भाई हमने बिल्कुल ही ये खत्म कर देना है या our struggle is over and we won't have to do anything about it, because they also feel they have to do something about the social remnants. I mean, वो जो society में चीजें रह जाती हैं, they don't say कि वो खुद ब खुद ही खत्म हो जाएंगी, मतलब उसके लिए भी struggle consciousness ये वो करना पड़ेगा. That is why you see in both the communist countries you always have the women's wing of the political party. That women's wing is meant to be doing this. I mean, not women's wing, but it's the national organization of Soviet women, or the national organization of Chinese women, or the national organization of this or that country, or those women are mainly meant to do this. So the Marxist feminists are, as I said, they take this stand. They revolution ke aaye or revolution ke baad. I'll talk about this more actually when I get into socialist feminism, because it goes into these issues much more and the problems with Marxism. Then we come to the radical feminists, I think that's it. And in radical feminists actually is where Shulamit Firestone comes in. Her main book, the book that she wrote, which as I said I have here, उसने कहा कि women are oppressed because of reproduction. And she said कि so the strategy has to be to stop reproduction.
Meaning what?
Meaning women should stop producing.
And
that actually they don't, no, not strikes. Strikes are बहुत हुई हैं. Strikes incidentally, this has been used by the Greeks 2,000 years ago, by the Russians 3 years ago, Russian women. The Greeks it was that the men were going to war and fighting too much. So the women said, we will stop sexual relations and we will stop having children. We are not going to breed children for you to send them to war. And eventually they won that round. They actually, it's a very large movement. And now we're talking about 2000. The Greek city state period. 3 or 4 years ago, the Russian women said, the men drink too much vodka and are always coming and beating us up and whatever. And no sexual intercourse until vodka is either banned or they stop. And the movement went on for 2 solid years until the state had to intervene. If you drink vodka and come home, forget about it, you sleep in the drawing room on the couch, but you are not entering my bedroom. And meaning that has been used as a strategy too. But Shulamit Firestone is not saying that. She's saying it has nothing to do with men. And now the technology has been developed so much you can have babies on your own if women want children. Of course, men are not relevant anymore. तो वो क्योंकि कभी बाज नहीं आएंगे, उनको हम ठीक भी नहीं कर सकते, कुछ भी नहीं कर सकते. So really one should just not kill them off, make them irrelevant to your life. And she said to you with new technology, this was her position. The problem with this position is basically that no, her. I'm giving you the different people, women who played a role in the radical feminist thing. She's one person. The others are not also. But somewhere there is a radical feminist position which I'm getting to. She says, what she didn't realize is that by saying that technology, technology itself is controlled by men. And also that the problem, is that you can't control the sex of your child. unless you then use further technology. So you will still give birth to men. So you can't have whatever a women's society, whatever. So there are major flaws in our argument. But basically she's saying that कोई ऐसी इसमें मतलब अलग ही कर लें, we can do it now, then no, we don't need them anymore. जब तक ये reproduction का चक्कर रहेगा, these men, there's nothing we can do about it. The other woman, Susan Brown Miller, said that patriarchy is based on biology, but on men's biology and not on women's. मतलब वो biology है, and that is why patriarchy is. But because of male biology, and she specifies this, because men can rape, and therefore by being able to rape, they have that power, that physical brute power over men, and it is their biology that gives this power. And men use this to intimidate, to control, and to put fear into. The other thing is that, or the question that one may raise on her argument, which is true at one level that men can rape and women don't rape, is that the radical feminist, she also is emphasizing biology. And the question is not you can reverse it, that men can rape, but women are multi-orgasmic. Women can have multiple orgasms. And so there's a power on both sides. It's now going into technical thing. A man can rape once or have sex with him, he has to have a break after that. Women are multi-orgasmic, therefore can have many more relationships. So if you go into biology, then both have a power over each other, or somehow that biology, your explanation of biology is not sufficient. Just the fact that a man can rape doesn't mean that he must always or will always. This was a criticism of them. But essentially what radical feminists are saying is that this thing is biologically determined because of reproduction or because men can rape. And they say that men will always be like this, and that the roots of radical feminists are basically still basing it on biology. They're saying that biology एक ऐसी चीज है which either क्योंकि वो reproduction का आ जाता है, women have children and therefore they can be controlled and will be controlled, या men can rape, therefore men's biology allows that expression of aggression, या ये है कि वो ये भी कहते हैं कि the root of patriarchy is male aggression, and males are aggressive because they actually, now here they turn Freud around. They say men, see Freud, who was a psychologist and a major man who made a contribution to psychology, उसका कहना था कि Freud का ये कहना था कि actually the problem is that women have a complex because they have penis envy. They envy the fact that a man has a penis. This way it was turned around, and they said actually, the radical feminists say, that men are envious of women because women can produce and create. And that in fact the quotation from her is that who would want to be but actually the fact of creating life, nature, is something that is an enviable thing. and males will always be aggressive because men can't produce children. तो इनकी पोजीशन ये है कि they are radical feminists. They believe in biological determinism. They say that men are essentially rapists, that they cannot change. मतलब वो socialization में नहीं जाते हैं. And therefore उनकी जो solution है is to withdraw from male society. And in America and in some areas, they have these all-female communes and systems, etc. जो उन्होंने कोशिश की है to try. Some have even had children through artificial insemination. Some don't believe in children. मतलब उसमें भी बहुत varieties हैं. But the basic thing is कि भाई इनका तो कुछ नहीं कर सकते, देशयात्री का कुछ नहीं कर सकते, उनके भाड़ में जाएं, हम अलग अपनी दुनिया बनाते हैं, ये अलग बनाएं, हम तो बच्चे पैदा कर सकते हैं और हमारी नस्ल चलती रहेगी, ये मर जाएंगे. And this is the only solution on that. And we will live out happily without them or हमें कोई जरूरत नहीं. So I mean, this is their resolution, saying that yes, get back. The next ones are the cultural feminists, who actually are very close in one sense to the radical feminists. That's why I sort of link them. I think it links me here, but whatever. The cultural feminists argue that women have special ways of gaining knowledge. ये खास एक औरत में और औरतों में एक खूबी है कि उनके मतलब अच्छे तरीके होते हैं in terms of knowledge, in terms of they have intuition, they're intuitive, they have a sixth sense, they have another sense. Intuition is highly developed. They have and they are therefore more creative because they have this other. सब कुछ और भी इनमें है जो मर्दों में नहीं है, औरतों में. And in this they also go into things like health, media, women's way of relation to health, and the great contribution they have made is particularly on health, because they have gone a lot into indigenous medicine and faith healing and a lot of these types of astrology, pharmacy, what the revival we had in the feminist movement. They've done that. New ways of relating to each other. A lot of what feminists call collectives and non-hierarchical or unch-neech is the contribution of the cultural feminists, who say women do not relate in the same way as men do. Women are more cooperative, women have a different sense about being together, उनकी socialization कुछ और होती है, उनके social relationships कुछ और होते हैं, they're not so aggressive, they're a different type of people, and there is something like a separate woman's culture. The way a woman sees things is different. They are more peaceful, they won't go to war, but they will say these things, but the great contribution has been in areas like, as I said, in health and in whatever, where they've made major strides, and their greatest contribution has been in relationships and organization within the feminist movement. Like they are the people who have brought up this whole collective होनी चाहिए, hierarchy नहीं होनी चाहिए, कोई president ना हो, सब मतलब people हों, different ways of relating, how to make decisions, मतलब constant things on that. But they are also radical feminists in the sense that they are also saying that there's something in women's biology that makes them nurturing and gentler and softer and intuitive and whatever. At the same time, they are also therefore withdraw into collectives or communes or whatever. मतलब एक तरह से वो भी अलग हो जाते हैं, क्योंकि हमारी ज़बान, हमारी इंट्यूशन, हमारी जो सोच है वो कभी आदमियों के साथ मिल ही नहीं सकती. So we just see it differently. And because we see it differently, we feel happier with each other. Why should we try and convert them and make them see something they never see? We just withdraw into our own selves. The implications of radical feminism is that women, because they have the same kind of body, are like a class in themselves, like the working class, peasant class, औरतें भी एक क्लास बन जाती हैं, क्योंकि हालांकि उनकी अब क्लास में दो डेफिनेशंस आ जाती हैं, which I tried to give you when we were talking about definitions. एक तो जो इकोनॉमिक रिलेशंस होती हैं और दूसरी सोशल रिलेशंस. So women and men are class not because men may exploit women economically. I mean, women who are working may not be exploited by men, but the social relationships are exploitated, and that the social relations of exploitation and not exploitation, not economic, but the social relations of oppression, the social part of it, means that women become subordinate and therefore become a class. So that there is a class division between men and women. And just as men and women have a class division, or labor capitalists have class division, or peasant landlords have class division, we can never join them. Like a peasant can never join the landlord. The labor can never join the industrialist. Similarly, we can never join them. They are our enemies who have to be either overthrown, or you withdraw from them because you can't kill them all off, or you can kill them off, so kill them off. And they don't say kill them off, I'm laughing at that, but meaning is somehow you just withdraw from them.
I didn't understand it from the and you have this kind of political class.
See, because women are biologically the same, so as far as men are concerned, they become a class because all women, regardless of whether they are rich or poor or middle or lower, are the same because they are oppressed by males, whether they are working class, middle class, upper class, whatever, in the same way. So that's why women become a class, even though their economic classes may differ. मगर वो एक class बन जाती है, legally. Men also cutting across other classes become another class. और वो कहते हैं कि ये हिस्ट्री में फर्स्टों से चल रहा है, and that this is the class division. और ruling class जो है इस class में is not the individual man but the system of patriarchy. And the ruling, the problem is capitalism for labor, the problem is feudalism. Feudalism is the thing. For women as a class, patriarchy is that system that they have to find.
They're saying you can't get rid of it. They're saying you can't get rid of it.
No, they're saying that you see patriarchy is a system, and you have to find a system. Now they then don't think that you can fight it, and you can't resolve it in the same way, because how is the feudal one resolved? कि मर्दों को मार दो, feudals को खत्म कर दो, nobility को खत्म कर दो, take over the land. You resolve the capitalist thing by taking over the factory, the capital. How do you can't resolve this one? If you can't resolve it, then withdraw. और वो खुद ही बढ़ जाएंगे because they can't produce. And we, with our technology, will continue producing. So it's sort of a bad type of resolution. This is a fairly common or more common in some parts of the United States, radical feminist trends. Some parts of Europe, मगर ज़्यादा ये Canada में ये develop हुआ है. In England, there are groups, there are radical feminist groups, and they basically argue that any type of relationship with men, even strategically, is basically collaborating with the enemy. So, huh? So, in that sense, you reject all relationships with men, and which doesn't mean, and people think it means, that the radical feminists are necessarily lesbians. They may or may not be, but then any woman may or may not be. It's not that they are, by them saying, okay, we withdraw, doesn't care, every radical feminist who say, she's a lesbian, whatever. She's merely saying collaboration. She's not saying I have a relationship with a woman. She's saying if I want to produce a child, I can through technology. But she's living, she feels, she will live in a community of women. One or two of them may have relationships, or they may not, or whatever, but then one or two may anywhere. They're not, it's not an advocated stand of the radical. In this strand, there is a group that does say categorically that lesbianism is a political issue, is a political stand to take. But it's a very minor group, even in the United States. I have never met a group who has said to as a group, this is our group position. Individually, people may be or may not be, but I haven't met any major women's group who has said that what they want is let it head or something. But no. Oh, you have not. But they say that. They say, oh, you have not. But they don't say that it's important, but they don't say it, meaning that they don't advocate lesbianism. They're not saying that. They're merely saying to just withdraw. But having any relationship with a man is collaborating with the enemy. Sometimes they take direct action against men. In the sense that if direct action like हम लोग भी लेते हैं, meaning a man has raped a woman, वो जाकर उसे मार आते हैं. That's way direct action, which also here one has been tempted to many times. और जहाँ हुआ भी है कि इंडिया या बांग्लादेश औरत को किसी को और औरत को कोई मार रहा है तो औरत जाके उस आदमी को मारा. That type of direct action. Pornography वो देखेंगे, woman's use of body, and they won't blacken the ad and tear it up or whatever. In fact, I saw a wonderful ad. वहाँ उसकी photograph भी है कहीं उसका poster and बना था. There was some Italian car, Fiat. You see that? Fiat being sold. और नीचे उसने लिखा था, if this car were a lady, it would get its bottom pinched, meaning it's such a cute car. So this woman had written underneath it, with big bold, paint ke saath, if this lady were a car, she would run you down. This type of direct action. So this is the position of the radical feminists and cultural feminists, and the radical feminists and cultural feminists are sort of the same, except cultural feminists में ये ज़्यादा इतना वो biology का, हालांकि biology की बात आती है, but they go more into intuition and sixth sense and prophecy and faith healing and healing by witches, not witches I mean in that awful sense, but witches when they have women who have extra sensory powers and whatever. Some of them are even creating their own, not creating, there is in the feminist movement, हर जगह यहाँ भी, और मुसलमानों में भी है कि trying to create goddesses and whatever. आजकल बहुत हो रहा है. A whole range of Muslim feminists who say that God is realized a woman or neither or whatever. बहुत नाम हो रहा है. But looking for you, okay, he is not a man. So, there are women who are Muslim who are saying that. So anyway, the problem with radical feminism, at the moment I've just told you their position, is that it doesn't look at economic classes at all. It talks about women as a class and men as a class. और बीच में जो इकोनॉमिक क्लासेस हैं उसके बारे में वो देखते नहीं हैं, सोचते नहीं. Nor do they look at racial difference. They assume that a black woman and a white woman are one, or an Asian or a Semi or a Mongoloid or a Chini or a whatever, कि वो बस एक ही है और इनमें कोई difference नहीं है. What they seem to forget is that what happens when a white woman controls a black man. They ignore the fact that women can be controlling men. After all, the South in America, plantation, the white woman was superior to the black man, and still is. So they ignore this racial thing completely. Plus, they don't look at the economic differences. But एक हद तक जोड़ बनता है between a rich woman and a poor woman, as a woman. कम्युनलिटी बनती है, मगर फिर भी रिच वुमन के और मसाइल हैं और पोर वुमन के और हैं, एक फर्क भी आता है. एंड दे सीम टू इग्नोर. Working class women, but they just seem to ignore. They're so happy with the fact that they're all women. अच्छा वो छोड़ छाड़ के क्योंकि कम्युन में चली गई हैं, तो वहाँ पे इक्वालिटी है ना, तो they're not concerned anymore कि कौन पुअर था तो कौन रिच था. जो रिच थी उसने प्रॉपर्टी अपना घर दे दिया कम्युन के लिए, कम्युन के नाम पे डाल दिया है. So वहाँ सिर्फ I'm laughing at it now. I don't know how they sorted this one out, but basically this is the position. And the main thing is that they accept biological determinism, and they don't accept biology as, meaning that they give overemphasis to biology and not enough to socialization, or they don't worry about socialization. The main contribution, and as I said, they have made major contributions. Their main contribution has been that they have raised and brought into everybody's consciousness the whole issue of consciousness raising. They are the people behind consciousness raising at one level, but they are the ones who consciousness raising, and they have, for the people who articulated the notion of the personal is political. Yes, the personal political is the basic concept in feminism, which means that जो मेरी personal चीज है, whatever happens to me as a person, whatever goes out, goes within me, is a political question, and it has to be resolved politically. And similarly, what is outside of me, what my political position is, must come within me. Meaning that I can't say, there's something wrong if I say I feel as a feminist, but I'm not doing anything about it. And the other way around, if I do something about it, and I don't imbibe it in my own life, and I go home and beat up my life, you can't say that ये मेरी अपनी बात है, it was a personal issue, it is mine alone. Politics is not something different for you to fight it for something else. That your politics stems from within you, and your life is a political statement in itself. By your saying that I have led a sheltered life and have not been involved yesterday, you were making in itself, your life was making a political statement. If tomorrow you had done or said something else, or your life had been different, your life itself is a political statement. Your non-involvement can be a political statement. So it says the personal is political, and then you must bring that into it. And this personal political stems from the individual to the group, and as I said, back to the individual. प्रॉब्लम इसमें radical feminism में आती है कि ये personal is political तक तो ले आते हैं or political path, but they don't extend it to society. They don't say we have to therefore change society. My life is important. I make that statement, and I try and change myself. But they don't worry about changing society. They, in their small groups, withdraw. So it never became the radical feminist movement, a movement for societal change. कि structural change हम नहीं चाहते, मतलब societal change हम चाहते, but they were very clear that the structure of society must change completely. Meaning that men must not rule in any way, not just men, but that we must have almost two separate worlds. They were talking about structural change. So this is, just to sum it up, the radical feminists see man as the enemy and feel that we have to struggle. So now just to recap the differences so far we've talked about Marxist feminists and radical feminists. The radical feminists see men as the main enemy. Marxist feminists see capitalist system as the main enemy. Similarly, radical feminists see biology as the basis of patriarchy. Marxism sees the economic base as the basis of patriarchy. So, the major differences are coming. Strategy की जब बात हम करते हैं, तो अच्छा in this radical feminism I'm including the cultural feminists. I'm saying about both. Strategy की radical feminists talk about separatism. The Marxist feminists say we must link up with worker struggles because it is only as the working class that working class revolution पहले आएगा, private property खत्म होगी तो हमारी links बनती हैं with the working class और working class के साथ काम करो इनकलाब की. That's strategically that's the thing. So we have three strands so far that we discussed. Liberal feminists equal rights within the system, not a major structural change. The radical feminists want major changes but see biological determinism and say that there is no hope, so you just separate. And that biology is the basis of subordination. तीसरा ये है कि मार्क्सिस्ट फेमिनिस्ट जो इकोनॉमिक्स को देखते हैं और कहते हैं कि इनकलाब आएगा, remove private property, and then you will be liberated from it. Now, what the socialist feminists say, where we're getting into it, उनका ये कहना है कि ये जो दोनों थियरीज हैं, मार्क्सिस्ट की और radical feminist की, they're both inadequate. What we need, they argue, is कि इन दोनों का एक जोड़ होना चाहिए. दोनों का जोड़ होना चाहिए. They should be, you should integrate the two. Both of them are making valid points, but neither is really answering all the questions. And the most important book in this is a book called Juliet Mitchell, the book called Women's Estate. In fact, her famous quotation on this is that we should ask feminist questions and get Marxist answers. मतलब we should ask questions as women अपने जो मसाइल हैं उन पर, मगर जवाब जो आए come within the revolution. The revolution is important, economic revolution. So the main thing is we should ask feminist questions and get Marxist answers. She says that there are four things that oppress women. एक तो women are oppressed, the number one is production. उसका मतलब है कि और कहना भी है और इस पर उसने काम भी बहुत किया है कि women are used as a reserve army of labor. Women's work is used in the labor force as a reserve army. जब जरूरत पड़ती है औरतों की, like in wars or other times or whatever, the women are drawn out. When they're not required, they're the first to be, the last to be hired and the first to be fired. So they are a reserve army and cheap labor. So they are exploited. They are never given equal wages. They are kept as in the informal sector. And they are like a reserve army. जब जरूरत पड़े तो वो कर लो और जब नहीं जरूरत पड़े तो निकाल लो. तो एक तो उनकी लेबर जो है वो exploit होती है. Secondly, reproduction. Women's fertility, childbearing oppresses women. Also, the ideology of motherhood, which lays down women's basic role as mother, even in socialist countries. That somehow bringing up a child, being a mother, she says, ये कोई instinct की नहीं है. अगर बच्चा मर्द पालेगा, उतना ही प्यार उसको होगा, उसको भी डायपर्स बदलने आ जाएंगे, सब कुछ हो जाएगा. माँ में खास कोई ऐसी जीन नहीं है जो ज्यादा प्यार करती हैं. कोई ऐसा हाथ दो ही हाथ है. In fact, she says the mother doesn't have a third hand for that extra child. या ना उसकी कोई जीन है, ना कुछ ऐसी चीज है. मतलब कोई ऐसी फिजिकल चीज नहीं है. ना उसका दिल फिजिकली बड़ा है, ना उसका दिमाग छोटा है, ना none of these things. So, meaning anyone can nurture. But it is the state, even in socialist countries and society, that makes a woman conscious that the role of motherhood is hers. बच्चों का ख्याल करना, रखना, वो औरत का काम है. Considered everywhere by the most progressive of people, by the most progressive of men, by the most progressive of states. This is somewhere, I don't know. And as she says, beyond, feeding them in terms of when you're breastfeeding, what is so special about looking at these other nine years, and they'll get as close to the mother, to the father. अगर वो रात रात much time रात को वो उठे तो वो उसके लिए चिल्लाएगा, क्योंकि माँ उठती है तो माँ के लिए चिल्लाते हैं बच्चे. But there's nothing special हमें वो बच्चा पैदा होते ही तो नहीं कहता है माँ मेरे पास आ जाओ. So she goes into this in great detail, but she says it's socialization. The child gets used to, which we have seen. भाई आया को पकड़ा दो तो बच्चा becomes the ayah. The child doesn't know naturally what it is. Most children who are brought up by ayahs prefer being with the ayah than to the mother. There's no biological sort of automatic thing to have. That only in films one sees that Sadak Beg lost your mother 20 years ago and suddenly says, Ma! No, normally you don't get that. So, it doesn't happen, normal stages of life, automatically recognize who your parents are. But adopted children and they don't know who their parents are. If they can't speak to them, they wouldn't know them either. ना माँ को पता चलेगा ना उसको. It's not, So she says that women are oppressed. एक तो वो child bearing, they do produce, they are fertile. और दूसरा ये जो ideology साथ आ जाती है ना कि उसने माँ बनना ही है. This oppresses women. This is the social oppression of it. Then she says the third way that women are made subordinate or oppressed is in the area of sexuality. Women's sexual urges are curbed and controlled and negated. Sometimes in a very obvious way, like जब वो female circumcision वगैरह होती है in some parts of the world, particularly in Africa. Or sometimes I mean, sometimes not in the more obvious ways, sometimes in the less obvious ways, but sexuality is controlled. I mean, I'm sure all of you have grown up with the same thing being told you at home, to say, you can't, and you must, and stay with him and come back at 9 o'clock and 8 o'clock, and meaning there's all of that. But then the husband controls female sexuality, and female sexuality is never allowed to give, expression. Women don't even know what to do. If you are not enjoying it, you're considered terror-figured. If you are enjoying it, you're considered horror. If you are meaning कि कहीं इसको जीने नहीं देते, no matter what you do. But sexuality is controlled, which is the third thing. चौथी जो बात है वो कहती है कि जो socialization होती है within the family, I mean, men and women are born equal, but through the whole process of socialization and role modeling and media and ये and वो औरत तुमाची बन जाती है और मर्द मर्द। अगर उन्हीं को तुम रिवर्स करके मतलब उनकी परवरिश करो, you find the roles will have changed. If you don't have a family which puts these type of pressures on you, it will tend to be different. If you have a family जो बहुत ही वो करते हैं, तुम वैसी the family says you can do anything, whatever your brother can do, you'll be like that. If they say कि brother ने भी बर्तन धोने हैं शुरू से ही, I mean, it's not something that that if you reverse or if you do it a different way. So she says that these are 4 areas, so we have to address both. And neither the radical feminists nor the Marxist feminists are really looking at all the issues. The other thing that she says, which is very major, and which I brought up slightly, that the Marxist feminists also started saying this, she says domestic labor की कोई बात नहीं करना. Domestic labor जो है, जो घर का काम है, that is labor that is exploited, both by the state, not both, 3 ways, by the state, क्योंकि वो free labor है, compensate नहीं हो रहा, by capitalism, क्योंकि तुम you're both living your home, Marxism में होता है कि you are looking after the worker, so the worker goes back the next day to work, and plus you're producing more labor for another labor class, you're producing children. And third area is that her labor is exploited by the man in the home. So domestic labor, she believes, this productive labor has a role in the national economy, has a role in the domestic economy. फर्ज करो अगर औरत घर में बैठ के कपड़े सीखती है या मतलब मसाले साफ करती है या whatever she needs to do at home, which she can go out and buy. But if she is doing it and saving family income, she is playing a role in that family income. And by playing that role and bringing in, by saving family income with her labor, she's actually making money for the family. चाहे वो पैसा हो ना हो, जब वो घर में साबुन बनाती है और बाहर जाके 2 रुपए या 4 रुपए और 6 रुपए की चक्की नहीं खरीदती, she is saving that 6 rupees. तो उसका जो लेबर है, it should be worth that 6 rupees या 4 rupees या 3 rupees या 2 rupees, but worth something. कुछ तो उसने अपना मतलब लेबर उसमें डाला है, and she has saved that 6 rupees. So that 6 rupees should be counted to family income as her contribution to that. Plus खाना, पीना, रखना, सुनाना, बर्तन मांजने, ये वो, this is all labor. And this labor should, ये नहीं के necessarily के पैसे दो, but it must come as a part of national income. Must first come as family income and computed as national income. Because this labor is being expended by the citizenry of this country to produce this volume. अगर हर घर में वो साबुन बना दे तो साबुन का इस्तेमाल होगा. There would be no sabun factory. That doesn't mean you wouldn't ever put down, you should put down in your national economy, your GNP, okay, we have produced so many cakes of soap, whether they've been produced in the home or produced in a factory, but they've been produced and used. So they should be counted. So she says this is these are questions that don't really, are not really addressed. Now among socialists, now she made the breakthrough. She is considered one of the major contributors, the major people who made a breakthrough to what is called socialist feminism. Meaning, कि अब एक मतलब थोड़ी सी टेक्निकल बात आ जाती है. Probably Salam will know it as इसमें अभी Marxism पढ़ी हुई है. Marxism में जितना कि primary and secondary contradiction की बात आती है. Marxism says that there is one main thing, primary contradiction in that thesis and antithesis, two antagonists. At any given moment, there is one of primary importance. ये नहीं कहती पूरे मुल्क में और चीजें नहीं हो रही which are also contradictory and create tension, but there's one primary one. Marxists कहते हैं कि the primary one is class. Radical feminists वाले कहते हैं the primary one is gender. Socialist feminists कहती हैं या कहते हैं some men have done work on this too, कि both are of equal importance, which is also true because if we look at Pakistan today, primary contradiction Pakistan में आजकल है the national question, not class. मतलब primary contradiction मुख्तलिफ हो सकती है, they don't always have to be class. I personally say today that there are three primary contradictions in Pakistan running concurrently: the national question, the class question, and the women's question. But इस वक्त पाकिस्तान में तीन contradictions हैं of equal importance and at equal antagonism. Most Marxists would dismiss what I'm saying, and they would say it's only class, but I see that people are much more aligned to their ethnic, national identity than they are concerned. They will fight labor, are not identifying with their class relation, but fighting each other, particularly in Karachi. One will see that women are fighting with much more anger, whatever, across class lines, poor and rich women, on the women's issue, then they are concerned about fighting among themselves, कि तुम अमीर हो, तुम्हें करें. So they're fighting as women much more. Or the nationalities are fighting as nationalities. वो नहीं पूछ रहे कि भाई तुम अमीर मुहाजिर हो या गरीब मुहाजिर हो, तो गरीब मुहाजिर हो तो गरीब पठान के साथ लग जाओ, तो अमीर मुहाजिर हो तो अमीर हिंदी के साथ आ जाओ. I mean, they're not saying this. They're saying we are a national across class lines. और जो class issue है, वो काफी हद तक दिखवाया हुआ है. Nobody is identifying with class. Problem ये आ रहा है. Peasant is not identifying with peasant. वो कह रहे हैं कि तुम पंजाबी peasant हो, मैं सिंधी peasant हूँ, तुम वहाँ के हारी हो, मैं वहाँ से कुछ और हूँ. मतलब they are not even getting together as a class. So in fact, class is becoming lower as a primary. So what primary contradiction means basically is the first thing we should resolve. I think in Pakistan the first thing we have to resolve, the first two things are the national question and the women question, and in fact class question. Until you resolve the national question, the class is not going to come together. That has almost become a bigger issue. Not that I like it as a Marxist, but I have to accept it as a fact. I don't like the fact that the working class is split up across these lines. But that is a fact in Pakistan. So there are several currents in socialist feminist thinking. एक तो है sort of school of thought called the subordination of women's school. It started the current school of thought Meaning, when I say school, I mean there are many people and theories and whatever and basically इनका पोजीशन ये है कि जैसे कि patriarchy on the one hand should not be discussed as universal. It has different permutations, different articulations. कहीं कुछ और है, कहीं कुछ और है. Historically also it's not ahistorical. मतलब history में भी इसकी शक्ल बदलती आई है. Therefore we can't say that it is an all-embracing eternal or totally universal phenomena. हर जगह हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि पेट्रियार्की वहाँ क्या चीज़ है और किस किस्म का सिस्टम चल रहा है और हमारी जो स्ट्रेटजीज होंगी वो भी मुख्तलिफ हैं. हालांकि एक हद तक तो जनरलाइजेशन है. I mean, a rape is a rape is a rape is a rape, चाहे वो अमेरिका में हो, पाकिस्तान में हो, सोमालिया में हो, यहाँ तो वो issues. Some issues they say are definitely the same. But then there are many other issues which change, etc. And but yet systemic जरूर है of patriarchy, but it will change. And they say that, in fact, they are the ones who go into this whole issue of saying that sex is not important at all. And what is important is gender. That means the social attitudes, the socialization, etc. is the most important. So that, because it's just socialization, anybody can do any type of job. The only reason why they can't is because the society is not allowing it, that religion is not allowing it, something else is happening. But actually there's no problem. And it has nothing to do with your gender, etc. Can't be gender specific. This school is basically much more concerned, not so concerned about women per se, but more concerned about the relationships between men and women. They do a lot of their work on how people relate. So ज़्यादा इनका काम है on family, domestic labor, marriage, and this is a school of feminism that is used by a lot of researchers and is quite popular, etc. To go and do these micro studies all over the place. इस शहर में और का क्या हाल है, उस शहर में क्या है, वो क्या है. The criticism that some people have of them is that they depoliticize कि ज़्यादा वो रिसर्च में और नुक्ताचीनी में कि यहाँ ये है तो वहाँ वो है उसमें पड़ जाते हैं. And जो political issue है to raise it and to go into struggle वो ज़्यादा नहीं होता. और ये ज़्यादा रिसर्चर वगैरह इन स्कूल में फंसे हुए हैं मगर मूवमेंट का कोई खास ताल्लुक नहीं. But it's still, I think they have done a lot of work, and I think that the movement has used a lot of this work. And many of these people have been responsible for producing a lot of the material which activists have used, which ignorance women and struggle. दूसरा जो social feminist group है, it's called the Patriarchy and Capital School. The first one, incidentally, is more ideas, Sussex University, England, whatever. This patriarchy in capital school is Germany, France, Holland. It's more the Western European. Capital. Patriarchy and capital school. वो कहते हैं कि there's a direct link between patriarchy and capitalism, and on the one hand, while patriarchy does link all individuals according to their class, irrespective of their class, मतलब कि it links the poor woman with the rich woman, patriarchy does. फिर भी जो a woman who works in a factory is exploited by capitalism as well. तो मतलब उस पर double exploitation आती है, एक patriarchy की और दूसरा as a worker. तो मतलब patriarchy in terms of school is basically saying if the average woman is exploited by both patriarchy and capitalism. और फिर इसमें काफी मतलब details हैं, but the problem is always that, as I was saying even earlier, वो जो मैंने भट्टा मजदूर का कहा था, because poor women are exploited also by patriarchy, which also benefits the poor man in the household, the peasant, the worker. They get these strange alliances with the other class, and they, अब जैसे इस्लामाइजेशन हमने देखा है कि गरीब वर्ग की उन्होंने आवाज नहीं उठाई. They were quite happy कि चादर और चादर वाली हो गई, वो they were not too pushed. At one level they weren't concerned because औरतें वैसे भी काम करती हैं और करेंगी. But the other part, कि चादर ओढ़ो और घर में बैठो और शाम को ना निकलो, whatever also suited. So they were not concerned about it. In fact, even on the work issue, men came out at that point only because when Israel said किसी औरत ने काम नहीं करना, तो जो civil servants और senior professionals हैं जिनकी बीवियां 10-10, 15-15 हजार रुपए लाती हैं, वो बोले थे, because they could not maintain their standards of living. और वो सारे इस्लामाबाद की bureaucrats ने कहा, because their wives are earning their 15 or 20,000 and they have professional wives and they could not do without their women working and maintain their standard of living, and that is where the thing, changed and whatever. But the average people were not concerned. The first time the women's issue came up, Hadood ordinance and male organizations, left organizations, क्यों नहीं की? बिल्कुल सिरे से मतलब चुप. और जब हम बात भी करते थे, जैसे before our demonstration, पहले वो कहते थे तुम लोग कुछ भी नहीं हो. और फिर जब डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन के बाद जरा वहाँ हुई, they were all saying तुम हमारे women's wing बन जाओ, तो तुम हमारे women's wing बन जाओ, तो हमारे साथ आ जाओ, तो हमारे साथ आ जाओ. And then every demonstration they say, रहने आप हमारे सामने चलें. तो we were in fact used to have मंडों के साथ लड़ाई हुई थी सोशल कार्ड. मैंने कहा तुम आत्महत्या बहन पहल लाओ, अपनी बीवी और बहन 2 बेटियां वगैरह वो घर में हैं, मुझे बहन कह के कहते थे तुम आगे बोलियों के, तुम आगे चलो. They started using us and exploiting us. These are the men in the left. जब सिंध हारी कमेटी की सिंधी अवामी तहरीक थी और बलेजो जेल में था, I used to go and see him quite often, and I often said कि ये जो land issue, they would raise no land to the peasants. Kids, why don't you ask for land in men's names? I mean in women's names. And he said, no, the time is not right and pata nahi, whatever. But never any major stand. Which is very different to say the Vietnam movement and the Nicaraguan movement, where during the movement, if a man went home and beat up his wife, then he was given first a notice and then a warning and whatever, and then second time thrown out of the party. It was a very, Ho Chi Minh used to take a very strong stand on that. Okay, once you've done it, fine, then the village has to sit in the thing. Next time you do it, you lose party membership. Because I will not have in my party people who go home and beat up other people. And their wives, कल तुम आज तुम बीवी को मारोगे, कल तुम किसी और को मार दोगे. Meaning that they were very, but he did it through the movement. All through their war against Vietnam and said there were very strict rules of party membership. ये कर दो तो you're out of the party, वो कर दो you're out of the party. If you steal, you're out of the party. If you rape, you're out of the party. If in the war, there's a lot of booty and whatever. You take booty, you're thrown out of the party. All these things, were brought into the struggle. So that, for India was, I was talking to him saying that Vietnam, he knew this, I mean, he knows it quite well. बहरहाल मतलब उसका what I mean is कि जहाँ ज़मीन का भी वो रेस करता था ना कि ज़मीन हमें मिले, उनका डिमांड मेन तो उनका लैंड डिमांड था, वहाँ भी वो औरतों के नाम में प्रेजेंट रेवोल्यूशंस में भी, I'm not just talking about Kalejo, in present revolutions they're not raised separate, that women should get land in their own name. Now it's happening somewhat, but it never used to happen because male cadre of the parties have never wanted that, even though economically it would. That means patriarchy benefits them to such an extent that they're even willing to go away with economic benefits. मतलब कि to control woman, उसमें इतना फायदा है कि तुम अपने 1000, 2000 या जो भी तुम्हें शायद मिले उस औरत को 500, वो भी तुम गोल करना चाह रहे हो just to be able to control her. So there must be something in it in itself. And this is not, as I'm saying, I can give you countless examples where this has happened, where the demand has not been the same. So in this socialist feminist thing, basically the conclusion, there's not a conclusion, but there is, basically they're picking up both the gender and the class issue. They're saying कि औरत उनकी भी issues उठाओ, मगर अगर ज़मीन की issue भी उठा रहे हो तो फिर औरत की ज़मीन नहीं होनी चाहिए. The woman as class, as a peasant, woman as worker, and woman as a woman against patriarchy. दोनों साथ साथ था, क्योंकि उनको उनकी oppression दोनों तरफ से आए, और ये simultaneous चलेंगी जा रही है, और अगर simultaneous नहीं चलेंगी, then neither will happen. Socialism शायद आ जाए, मगर वो female और women's oppression नहीं जाएगी. Women's oppression जा ही नहीं सकती जब तक economic exploitation. So दोनों चीजें concurrently you have to fight on two fronts. This is the major difference between the socialist feminists and the Marxist feminists, who analyze it the same way, but they say that the two have to be fought together. And you can't say that after the revolution we'll ask for land for women, or after the revolution we'll worry whether he's beating up his wife or whatever. We say, socialist feminists say that through the movement this has to stop, and if you are wanting to create a new person who will take over the revolution, जो इनकलाब लाएंगे, in the struggle you have to create that new person. वो अगर revolution आ जाएगा, the person is not suddenly created overnight. कि कल हाथ में हथियार आ गया या हाथ में state आ गया and suddenly Pakistanis will become new people. वो जब struggle में करेंगे, you keep changing the system, तो आधा इनकलाब आपका उसी struggle में आ जाएगा. You start relating differently, you start practicing differently, and half your revolution is over before you've taken over state power. You started giving in equal inheritance to your daughters, you started treating them differently, you stopped beating your wives, you stopped मतलब वो exploitation, subordination वो खत्म करते जाओ ना, तो जब इनकलाब आएगा तो आधा इनकलाब तो आपका मतलब वैसे ही जीत गए होगे. And you will have a new type of person to run that. नहीं तो फिर वही होगा कि जैसे इनकलाब में हुआ है, that you give the state to these same old people, but the people haven't changed. कल तुम workers को, अपने labor leaders को state पकड़ा दो, you think it will be any different to the present state? It will be exactly the same. Landed नहीं है, मगर पैसेदार लोग भी हैं और labor class भी हैं, industrialists भी हैं और professionals भी हैं. नहीं, head doesn't matter, but उसमें industrialists भी हैं, पैसे वाले भी हैं. जब पिछले साल इसी साल जब हम कराची आए थे, वो उसका जलसा नहीं हुआ था जब उसने पैसे मांगे थे. हाँ, जब उसने पैसे मांगे थे, and he asked for money, donations in a public meeting, and he got what, 36 lakhs that day. People giving 6 lakhs, 10 lakhs, what, मतलब पैसा जरूर है उन लोगों को, हैं? हाँ, सलमा अहमद was a major industrialist with them. मतलब वो भी है और working class भी है और सफेद पोस्ट पे middle class, clerical, professional वो भी है. So it cuts across class lines.
But the only party
No, they all do. That's the problem. Even the left parties do. That's a big problem. National parties all cut across class lines. There's no, I mean, there are minor parties like Mazdoor, Kisan, but who are, means that there are 5 members, and there are about 6 communist parties in Pakistan or 6 members of the parties. So, I mean, those 6 probably have no class differences among them. It means they have no workers either. But, I don't think they're but major parties, they are cutting across. ANP is cutting across class lines. People's Party definitely, or from the IJI totally, M2M is. What about the major parties that are cutting across class lines? None of them are class-based parties. Only छोटी parties हैं जो members हैं, which don't have such major differences. So basically this is, and they, socialist feminists will also pick up issues like, dowry and pornography and portrayal of women in media and using different forms to mobilize and raise consciousness and all of this thing. मतलब issues उनके वही हैं और ज़्यादा, मगर वो class issues भी साथ raise करते हैं. And there are a couple of other, variations of the social feminist strain, another one from the German school, but essentially, इसका जो pattern बनता है, is these 5 currents of thought. Socialist feminist का resolution ये है that through the movement you change people, men and women. That it's all a question of socialization, that men can change and women can change. Biology has nothing to do with it. Even reproduction, but that's but it's not such a major thing. But otherwise, what men are, they have been made. What women are, they have been made through socialization. वही तुम बदल सकते हो, मर्दों को भी बदल सकते हो, औरतों को भी. It's a very tough battle changing men because men are in positions of power and therefore it's difficult and will take time, but it's not biologically determined. And therefore you work towards it and concurrently, simultaneously, you fight on both levels of exploitation. Resolution इनका ये है कि definite inqilab, definite structural change on both fronts. A revolution in terms of the economic structure and state power, a definite revolution in terms of the liberation of women. And liberation of women, but at the same time, the total changing of men. Men cannot remain men the way they are, no. They must change as much as women become stronger. Men must give up and be made to give up and be, raise consciousness, whatever, to change themselves with the process. And if men are genuinely with the women's movement, that is well. And they also bring in the personal as political as art. They're not interested in the men who march with them on the streets and then go home and beat up their wives. In fact, they will say, we're not interested in your manifestos, we want to know how you teach your daughters. So, what inheritance you give them, but they say definitely कि तुम आज से हम देखें कि तुम अपने family में where it concerns you most, what stand you're taking, what's happening. And this is the socialist feminist school. एक और जहाँ बनता है पाकिस्तान में, which is a very tricky one, and many Pakistanis yell and scream at me whenever I put this thing in because they don't want to be associated with them at all. Is really the Islamic fundamentalist women who are definitely fighting for their rights the way they see them. They definitely they become feminists by our definition. What structure they want we may not like, but they definitely want structural change. Now, its position, theoretical position, is very close to the radical feminist position, where they say biological determinism, men are rapists, and therefore one must withdraw from men. Not the individual man, husband, son, father, but men in society. Men will never change. The moment they see you, they will want to date. I mean, they say this, that therefore, instead of the radical feminists who say कि अपना गांव देखे बिल्कुल अलग हो जाओ, they say, चादर ले लो. You hide yourself from them because they're totally untrustworthy and they cannot change. And the moment they see you without this gota, they just go crazy. I mean, this is their position, their theoretical position. Now so what I'm saying is that their position is very close. Now radical feminists will die 1,000 deaths if I told them this. And when I mention it to the Islamic fundamentalists, they want to murder me when I say, hey, actually, तुम लोग तो बहुत ही radical feminist किस्म की तुम्हारी position है, theoretical position. क्योंकि दोनों एक ही चीजें कह रहे हैं. कह रहे हैं कि मर्द को हम कभी बदल ही नहीं सकते, औरत तो कभी नहीं बदलेगी, हमारा यही है कि हम बच्चे पैदा करें, हम जेंटल हैं, हम सॉफ्ट हैं, हम ये हैं, हम वो हैं, हम माएँ हैं, हम बच्चे पैदा करते हैं, पालते हैं, हम अच्छे हैं. मर्द तो कर ही नहीं सकते. और मर्दों का है कि वो यू कांट चेंज देम एट ऑल. ये तो रसूल पाक ने कहा हुआ है, ये हुआ है, वो हुआ है, और वाकई रसूल पाक ने इतनी दफा कहा हुआ है. दैट आल्सो बिकम द प्रॉब्लम. I mean, there are all sorts of cases in Hadith and Quran where one point when he says, okay, you see this woman on the road, run home quickly and to your wife. I mean, as if, if you don't run home for 1 second, you can't wait. And that's one that any woman will do. Huh? You see one woman who arouses your lust, you have to run home to your wife. And secondly, you can't control it. You can't, meaning there's no such thing as look jao, and whatever. And countless hadiths, which are some of them so absurd, women should be waiting and ready for her husband regardless of what happens, or a hadith which I brought which are bringing oont wala hai. Huh? No, meaning that hadith influences society. Society believes in hadith, whether we believe or you believe is irrelevant. But Pakistan mein hadith is used. In our laws it's hadith, not the Quran. So जो laws बनते हैं वो hadith पे बनते हैं. And hadith says all sorts of things. I mean, like the camel wala, have you heard the camel wala thing? It says that a woman should be available to a man when he wants her husband. Whatever she may be doing, even if she is riding, even if she's even if she's climbing onto a camel. Of just the contortion of that, कि वो बेचारी ऊँट पे चढ़ रही है. But certainly if she's cooking and certainly, मतलब ये हदीसों में तो बहुत है. बिल्कुल पागल. But there is this, one is not riding a camel at any given moment. But meaning that, what I'm saying is that there is this, but why they fall in the category because they have a theoretical position and they are very active for their rights. And some of the positions they take are very similar to other feminists. For instance, they stand on pornography. They don't believe a woman's body should be used to sell anything. Their stand on abortion is very similar to the feminist stand for a different reason. They say कि अल्लाह मियाँ अगर 12 बच्चे देता है तो अल्लाह मियाँ का हक है कि वो 12 बच्चे देता है. But the state must not control. Feminists say the state should not control how many children a woman should have. She should be able to abort when she wants to. But they both say the state should not control for different reasons. And but a woman, Islam doesn't allow women to abort. Meaning कि they say कि जितने बच्चे अल्लाह दे, you are your duty to have those children. But the state therefore should not control how many children you should have. बहरहाल वो कहते हैं कि the state should not, और हम the feminists also say that the state should not interfere. Talking about how many children a woman has. Huh. No, the state does not allow abortion in Pakistan. Right? Feminists say the state has no business to decide whether I want to have an abortion or not. Fundamentalists say the state should have no right to tell me how many children I have.
Yes.
But they both say the state should not have the right.
But if they give women the right to abortion, then how is it deciding whether she should abort or not?
No, but they are
given the woman the right. So they are asking for rights.
No. They're saying the Islamic people are saying the state has no business to decide whether we should have 2 children or 10 children. No. Now, state का ये in a woman to decide woman's body should not be controlled by the state. How many children she has. Feminists also say the state should not have the power. They should allow us to abort if we want. And the difference comes in that. But they both say the state should not have the right. That's what I'm saying, the similarity. They both say a woman's body should not be used to sell products. On pornography, in fact, they have a stronger stand than we do, and they have been much more mobile and much more active on it. They have actually in Karachi done things like paint billboards and whatever, which other groups have not done. They've actually stopped some ads, etc. that they were totally offensive. So इस पर भी उनका they feel that is something according to Satura Begum, who talks about it on the thing, who's the head of the women's wing of Jamaat Islami. She says कि ये एक क्योंकि आजकल का इस्लामी दौर नहीं है, so men have different sexual needs and they go, and I feel they had their 4 wives and they couldn't really meet the thing, and
women didn't lead them astray.
And women lead them astray, and another they're very vague.
What is feminist
On prostitution? Well, again, it depends on which feminist stand you're talking about. The radical feminists would say not at all, a woman should not have any relationship. The Marxist feminists will say that this is something that capitalism encourages, the sale of a woman's body. Huh?
all
No. That's what I'm saying, that the Marxists will say that there are people who have to do this to get into this, because this is also part of capitalism that makes you sell even your body. Labor or body is the same thing. But once the revolution comes, now that they make no moral judgment on it. Socialist feminists also make no moral judgment, and in fact say in this interim period, like Clara Zetkin was doing, that you organize them to, like any labor class, to ask for better wages and working conditions and whatever. So selling your labor and selling your body is really the same thing. You're still selling your body, but you should not be selling it at all in any case. That actually goes into another domain of privileges, etc. On that, women feminists do take very strong stand, especially failing use of children. And on that, they take a very strong stand. That comes into the open. They take a very strong stand on pornography. But I'm saying prostitution, they'll say they won't take a moral stand on it. I mean, like even that is working on the prostitution of Lahore, more in terms of organizing, to the extent that in the 82 demonstration, the next day, when our own press not only said how terrible we were and how we were bullied and whatever which Aslam was talking about, but they also said the prostitutes of Lahore demonstrated yesterday. That was a headline in the Viva. I mean, that's exactly what they called it. But there were prostitutes whom we had been working with.
be that do you support that people should do this as a means of living, or do you suggest that they should be encouraged to mobilize something different so that they have an option if they don't want to do it? Or do you think
If they have an option and they want to do something else, if I don't know how many options they have with that money that they earn. It is unrealistic to think that a prostitute who may earn 1,000 rupees a night or 500 rupees a night will suddenly go and work in a factory for 500 rupees a month. Also, prostitution is very important to the whole pimp system and the madam system and the whatever. Many are sold into or kidnapped as children. And they really have nowhere to go. The state is able to do something, all the feminist groups are able to do something that whatever, are able to help them. But here I think you would find differences within the feminists. I, for instance, don't take a moral standpoint at all. But they, a Marxist would take it, this is selling your body, and selling your body same way as selling your labor. That is also prostitution.
They have to pay taxes like everybody else.
Yeah. Yes, in England they're registered. In New York they're registered. They have medical certificates.
Not registered.
But they have to get their medical tests done for BE constantly.